Welcome to Integrated Rhythm, two swing dancing besties navigating race and the Black experience in jazz dance and other Afro-centric dancing. Chisomo Selemani and myself are your hosts. Today we are talking with Kenneth Shipp. Kenneth is a badass. He grew up dancing hip-hop and break dancing, and he is now a blues dance instructor. He is also a renowned DJ and musical enthusiast, and he took part in the powerful Move Together panel last year. He is also the executive director of the Ujima Blues Foundation, which we're going to talk about a little bit in this episode. Kenneth is also a founder and director of Nerd Union, a group of old friends talking about nerd culture, and Kenneth is their film expert, so check it out online. They do great things, and they did a recent episode on Ma Bailey's Black Bottom, which I know will be of interest to those of you in the jazz scene. And now we give you a conversation with Kenneth Shipp.
Integrated Rhythm with Chisomo and Bobby.
Yes. So Kenneth, I'm so excited to hear from you. And you might know this about me, but I mean, all three of us are instructors, right? All three of us are teachers in our own right. And so I love pedagogy. And so I'm super interested in people's teaching philosophy and what kind of shapes how they instruct. So would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and your process?
Yeah, I think a lot about how I was instructed. A lot of it was being thrown into the middle of stuff as I was growing up, and just having to figure it out. That doesn't mean there wasn't instructional moments there, and it doesn't mean other people got to see a variety of styles growing up. But a lot of it was like absorption. It's like you're going to see this multiple times over and over again, and the environment is such that it's encouraging to, and it encourages you to soak that up. So I think about we talk black line dances, for example. I never learned the electric slide. That never happened as a go to this middle school class and learn the electric slide. That just didn't happen. It was my uncles and aunties are doing the electric slide. It's Stevie Wonder's on. You get your butt out there and you figure it out, and then you bump into someone enough times to be like, okay, this many to the left, this many to all right, and it gets
Yeah.
good. And then you just get so comfortable with it that you're adding in your own little flares and stuff, or you see your uncle do something like, ooh, what was that? What was that? I also think about something I bring up in class a lot too is, so think about that reinforcement. I talk about even just swaying back and forth in a church pew,
Right.
over time,
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
environment helps condition you
Yeah.
to, okay, the beat is here. Everyone's going, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. And it's a simple thing. It's a very, very simple thing. But if you didn't have that growing up, those are sometimes one of the first things I try to adjust or create an environment that helps you feel that. So I have literally had people in class, I'm like, all right, we're going to get into the circle, or I'm going to make some imaginary pews and we're going to go from left to right, just so that you can get, especially if I get into a class or some fresh, brand new dancers, no background whatsoever. I was trying to think. I was teaching on a bar once, and I hadn't had to teach triples in a while because we had so many Lindy Hoppers coming over to do blues that it just, I tell them, hey, we're going to do a triple step here. And I just adjust the triple step. So I've been doing that for probably a couple months. I guess it's just been months, hadn't had anyone come in. So someone comes in and it's like, what is a triple? And my instructor brain needed a second because it had just been like, oh yeah, you do the, and they're like, no, I don't get any of that. What do you mean? I'm like, oh, we're square one here. So yeah, a lot of that has helped me. Having experiences like that has helped me. When I get someone in the door that is no background, doesn't have Lindy, hasn't done anything else, no blues experience. what mechanisms can I do that's going to assist them getting those fundamentals, or help build up those fundamentals.
Yeah. A good friend, Dee Daniels Locke, is also an educator. She's, you know her, she's an educator in multiple spaces, and she talks about situated learning. And so you just so nicely described situated learning, where you are learning something incrementally over time, and it's just embedded in you because you were in that environment. And so, yeah, I love that. And then also scaffolding, taking from what people know. So great.
I feel like I've talked to Chisomo about this a lot. I'm that person who grew up in a family and a culture that didn't do dancing in almost any sense of the word. Even when we went to church, in you sang the songs, "How Great Thou Art."
Yeah.
Your dancing was nodding your head,
Yeah.
and it was a very loose fitting kind of thing. And so when I started learning these dances, I learned via the same way that a lot of us did, especially 20 years ago, where you have your instructor says, take your right foot here and put it down on count one, and then like breaking it down really breaking it down through that direction. And the more I've danced, the more I've tried to unlearn a lot of those things that I learned from my first instructors. And so yeah, that really hits me, and I'm really envious that your students get to work with someone like you.
Appreciate it. Side note, my I was probably 10 or 11, maybe. And my first experience at a white church was a little bit of a culture shock, because they didn't do anything that I had grown up doing. So I kind of it's like, well, one, we also got out early, so that was nice. So I'm not going to complain about that. We got out. I'm like, man, they're already on the sermons. I'm like, all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of edging my mom, and like, they only did a couple songs, and they just sang it. We didn't do, and then did maybe one close. I'm like, wow, what is? Yeah, that took a little bit.
Yeah, I grew up in a pastor's family, so we, because when my dad went to seminary, he had to pastor at a number of different churches, and my parents also came from kind of two different church structures in Zambia. So seeing churches in Zambia, white churches here, black churches here, I got to taste all of it. And you're right, like if we're to talk about like white churches versus black churches, white churches, like, well, the commonality is the food. Everybody's food is banging, right? Like, if you have
it's almost like a mini competition.
Right,
So
yes.
I was like, if, I kind of like when I push back if someone's like, white folks can't cook. I'm like, it's like, there might be some people. I just think some people just don't know how to cook. But white people in the South, I haven't had that problem, because if you get to a white church, it's kind of the same way you go to a black holiday function. Whoever has the best mac and cheese is gonna get brought out, or they might get called out on like, we don't want you to bring your mac and cheese to this function.
Like, we're gonna have Miss Rebecca bring her mac and cheese.
It's like Miss Paula's gonna bring the potato salad, and we just you can bring some napkins. It's just we don't.
Oh, the napkins.
The napkins, exactly.
Oh, no.
So yes, so that's where I see like some intersections is the food. The food's banging, but yes, white churches pros shorter. They're shorter.
It's all relative. Like I remember being in my white church and thinking, my God, this sermon's like more than 15 minutes this week, right? And so, like, it's all relative. But we also, I never walked away snapping my fingers to the music that we had sung to.
Yeah. I mean, some black churches, we're talking about, you go in at 9 and you're coming out.
Oh wait, hold on. Yeah. Sometimes you'd have sunrise service.
Yes, you start in the morning.
Yeah.
You start at sunrise. and you're at church literally the entire day.
Yeah,
The
entire
entire day.
sunrise, Sunday school,
Yes.
then the actual Sunday service. Maybe eat.
Yes.
If you have a visiting church, then just go. Yeah, if you're visiting church, just pack it in for the day because you're not going anywhere.
Like for the day, that is a full weekend if you weren't already doing a full weekend's worth of stuff. So
I think one thing though that's so striking though is how participatory it sounds like the black church experience is versus the white church experience. So like my white church experience is like it's participatory because you're saying words at the same time that the choir is saying words when the song comes on, right? Like that's the participatory part. You don't, we don't have that, like you're not moving together. You're not, there's not a strong call and response tradition in the church that I grew up in. Hardly any. Like the only call and response is like, like the preacher says a thing and, let us pray for blah, blah, blah. Let us pray for blah, blah, blah. And you just say amen all together at the end. And that's like the most that like, and I wonder how much that's just part of like our European expectation, like the swing dance classes when you go and if you're expected to just listen to an instructor say a thing until it's your turn to try it, and then that's like your class experience, is that like a continuation of that same tradition?
Yeah. And I would say I've seen in churches with like a strong liturgical there's a word there. I'm sick today. So everyone, I am sick today. So if I'm a little bit off, that's why. But with a strong liturgical history, I'm going to use that, that there is back and forth, but it may not have a stank on it, right? There may not be some like extra stuff in there unless you take like the Anglican church that tends to be very formal. If you see the Anglican church in Africa with Black people in Africa, then there's a little bit more swagger in there. So I would agree with you when I've seen the intersection of both pieces, that when you bring in like an African or Afro-centric or like Black perspective, then you start to have a little bit more of this, there's this intangible element. I don't know. Kenneth, what do you think about that?
Yeah, where I see it pop up the most is like in improvisation. It's that. So if we go back to we could use the electric side example, but even if we just talked about a song happening in church, is that comfort. Even if you didn't know the next song someone's going to bring up, you're already comfortable in that space, and the ability to ad lib, hoop, holler, add a different. Extend a phrase, go an extra bar, is there and acceptable. And then it's like you could be laughed at for a certain. You might potentially get laughed at for a certain improv. Someone's like, I don't know about that one per se, but you're never really chastised for the attempt. Whereas, like, if I think about some other places I've been, it doesn't have to just be churches, but I think about some other European-centric structures I've been in. You think about movie theater. Typically, we would not talk in a movie theater. And I, even as a big movie connoisseur, I definitely love that rule. I want to be able to enjoy the experience, But there are certain instances where, a horror movie. I personally don't care if someone's talking during a horror movie, specifically if they're like, don't go in. What are you doing? Don't go. Ah! And I tell people, a classic.
Why are you running up the stairs?
It's like, get out of the house. And I tell people all the time, it's like, if you want to understand the big dichotomies, like go to a Black theater, and it could be a Black-owned theater, but I mean specifically a Black dominated theater when a comedy comes out or when a horror movie comes out, and you'll just see a huge culture change. And I wouldn't say that they're being disrespectful to the movie or to the experience. It's like, no, it's an additive that's acceptable in that space. It's a language that everyone is like on this, like, okay, we know how to operate within this. We know when to chime in, or like when the natural pause or break in the conversation is for me to get that word in edgewise. Or sometimes it's all all over it, and you just kind of pick. I'm gonna listen to that one for a little bit, or I'm gonna listen to that one for a little bit, or maybe I catch half and half or something, and both of them kind of get my stomach rolling. And like I think that's a really cool space to be able to live and exist in. But again, if you haven't been in that, it can really throw people for a loop to the point where they're like, "You're doing it wrong. Like, what it? Like this can't be how it works. You're being disrespectful." I was like, I think you need to broaden your horizons a little bit.
Yeah. Kenneth, you needed to be in my apartment 2 weeks ago when I was by myself watching TV, talking to the TV. I mean, I even paused the TV and I was like, like having a full on conversation with the characters. I'm like, Karen, that you shouldn't have done that. And this guy's a fool. Derek, how is this serving anybody? And then I unpaused it, went back in. So, yes. Yeah, very real. Love it. So, yeah. Bobby?
No, you go ahead if you had something.
No, I was actually going to say, Bobby, I know you had a question.
So, Kenneth, you are executive director of the Ujima Blues Foundation. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that project?
Yeah. So it's got some iterations to it. Me and Heather Atkins and a board of a couple other people back in Nashville. We had a community group there, Blues Dance Nashville, and ran different workshops and events there. And we really had this idea of we want to create a panel that people would have, a community driven panel where people could submit their ideas to. If you wanted to talk about organizing and you had the chops, you're just like, hey, I've been doing this and I feel like people should get this information. I want to create a panel and get it recorded and have that happen. So during one of our events, we put together this panel. That's where the Blues Geek title ended up coming from for one of our events was, it's like, we don't want to do a whole nother event. We'll put this track, effectively, this panel where people can come in and submit. And just like, hey, we're going to create this platform. And out of that, a lot of other needs started being identified. We started seeing like organizer training. I'm glad more events are having that as an option, but as far as like sustained resources, we were seeing that just wasn't like some person may have a cache of resources on their website, but there wasn't, and it's not saying they were hoarding it or anything, but it just wasn't as widely available or distributed as it could be. Or you'd have knowledge that was just kind of like dropping out of the scene. Like if an organizer decided, I'm done, which can be very good. It's like sometimes you need to like, yeah, I'm done. I'm energy burnt out, just can't. But it's also trying to find a way, like if they still had a desire to impart some of the information onto people, it's like how would we gather and capture that information? And then very blues specific was also just this idea of people not knowing what blues is, which we could also have we could have a long conversation on that. But we wanted to really make sure we were, along with holding stuff or creating a central spot for items and resources to be, was this also including that information of like, this is the blues research that we've done or authorized people to go on these trips, like going down to Clarksdale, Mississippi and getting recordings and doing interviews and things like that. It's like, here's us putting all of it out. And again, we wish we'd have video clips, although we do have teams of people working on that too. It's like, but this is what we got. This is what we've pieced together. These are the interviews and everything. And we want to make that available for you all to have. So once we started having all these different projects and things and seeing in these little individual buckets, we're like, this is all too much just for the event to run. And that's where Ujima eventually was born out of that, out of a need of like, yeah, let's consolidate this under one umbrella and get these resources out to people.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a great project. This actually in 2020, before the world kind of fell apart, Bobby and I and a group of people got to do a tour in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and we got to go to Juke Joint.
I think I heard about that that trip.
Yeah.
And so I was picking out some photos from it, and it was like, gas. Because
Yeah.
I will go down to Clarksdale. I mean, obviously not right now, but any legitimate opportunity I get to go down.
That's
And,
good to
hang
know. It
out
was amazing. We went to
Yes.
both Ground Zero and was it Reds, I believe?
Yeah, Reds.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And Bobby, I mean, he planned that. So it was a very educational moment for me because I honestly don't. I've studied blues to some degree, but I didn't know as much as now I know after going to Clarksdale, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, go
go
ahead.
on. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, I guess we could talk some blues out of Clarksdale if y'all want for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
So I had so again grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and people call it it's like, oh, country music. Like, well, we're Music City, USA for a reason, and it's we get people recording a variety of like a whole variety of stuff, and so I grew up listening to a lot of blues, even though that wasn't the thing. I was like, oh yeah, soul and funk, that's my stuff, and that eventually got me into hip hop music and DJing that. But it's like, oh, okay, yeah, blues is all right. But as I started to make that pivot and learn more about it, the old timers I would learn from in Nashville, they kept saying like, oh, that's just dancing. Every time I would talk about a specific blues move or try to be like, hey, does this pattern look familiar? Like this is something that we do, and they're like, oh yeah, we used to do that in the Juke Joint, but that's just dancing. And I was like, it kept happening over and over and over again. I'm like, what is going? Okay, well, I gotta figure something because what is going on? And then even in Clarksdale, that was repeated over and over and over again. Sharina Boyce, which is what she's about 35, 36, so close around my age, but her parents had taught her a lot of different things. She teaches some different like single juke joint moves and partner, like close embrace partner dances there. And goodness, I'm gonna get the town wrong. It's in Mississippi, but it's not Clarksdale. It's about an hour east of it. And she said the same thing, even though she had the names for the individual moves. She's still like, yeah, but this is just the things that my parents did in the living room or whenever they went out to the blues bar. I'm like, gosh, what is going on? So me and her had a back and forth, and I've talked to other instructors about this too, but me and her had a specific back and forth that really helped me out a lot. It was the popular dance of that small town. So there just wasn't going to be anybody, unless another sound came in, to usurp blues, which just wasn't happening in those towns. That was the pop music. So if that's the pop music, you think about going to the club today. It's like there might be some club moves we do or know of or have seen pop up on TikTok or YouTube, whatever. It's like, but when you go to the club, you're probably just going to dance. You're probably just going to do whatever comes to your head or thing. You're not going to call that an idiom into itself. That's what was happening here. And so again, blues was the pop music for that town. Everything and again, something might come out of it. So you think about fishtail. The reason we're able to know what fishtail is because someone saw that and said, "What is that?" And someone started to attach a name to it, and it's persisted throughout the years. Like in part of our video projects, we've been going back through and looking at old Soul Train videos, and we're like, oh shit, there. Oh, sorry. Can I say?
Oh yeah. You're
Please do.
But like we're going back through old Soul Train videos, and then we're seeing some of these moves that we know from predated that are popping up there. Just got more of a soulful, funky edge to it. And kind of start going down to. We've at least identified 4 or 5. They're like, okay, we're seeing that consistently pop up. And again, the reason I bring up Soul Train is because I know for a fact from even my own family history, things that they learned was like, oh yeah, I remember someone calling that move out. We didn't know what it was yet. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that has probably been and again, I'd like to get more, this thing is still evolving, things that we want to get more and more interviews on. But it's like, that is definitely a mode of transmission it's definitely how moves can transmit across towns and things is that you see it, someone gives it a name. And there probably been some other ones that were cool that just didn't get didn't get a title, or someone just didn't think, or someone's like, nah, that's a little whack. We're not. It's like, I'm good. I don't want to learn that one. And it just never left those towns.
Yeah.
We had like a similar. It's so fascinating how much of it relates to other dance forms. Like there's a similar thing in the bow swing old timers from Southern California where, if we showed them moves and stuff, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we did that," and you're like, "What's the name?" And like, didn't have a name for it. We just did it, and and they would only have like 4 or 5 names total for out of all the hundreds of motions that they did.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking there's something about old timer energy, right? It doesn't really matter of what, but there's this like old timer.
Exactly.
And I feel, and part of it, what's the difference between the person who's living in the moment versus the person who's researching the past, and how those are actually 2 different, realities. Like, what things are we doing that we don't have a name for, or that we haven't even thought to put a name for?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and sometimes I wonder if like the classroom culture and the modern culture maybe supports giving things names. So I know that like if I'm teaching a class and I have this move that my partner and I do, and we need to give it a name just so that we know what we're talking about. So we can say, hey, for today's class, you want to do that Seattle move? And now that's the move that we came up with when we were in Seattle, or that's the move we taught when we were in Seattle. And so like that becomes the Seattle move. And like, is that just like, we would never come up with a name for it probably. And the other thing that's interesting is like when in Jean Velos in Southern California, when she talks about moves, every move that she has is a scat sound. That's the name of the move, is the shubadoo-wop or the shikadoo-badoo, like that kind of thing. And that's
That's awesome. This super resonates with me because of learning from my mom. Like as I learned how to dance from my mom, and because of being a little bit removed from my own culture, I had to do a little bit of that like old meets new thing. And so I'd be like, Mom, what do you think about this? But none of the movements had specific names, right? So it was like, it was whether I was doing it right or I was doing it wrong, more so than what is the name of what I'm doing. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know if this has been your experience too, Kenneth, but the Southern California old timers famously could only say, no, it's wrong. And they couldn't necessarily give really good advice about it. They were just like, nope, that's not it. Not yet, not yet, not yet. And then usually if you got it right, they just didn't say anything.
Yeah.
So we're because also I just love how we nerd out on stuff, because it was me and Brianna McIntyre, Julie Brown, Crystal Wilkerson, and Clarksdale, and Julie was talking about compression she had felt from some leads that have been given to her, and also Ellis Johnson is a dancer that lives in Clarksdale. She was talking about how his compression felt. So does that?
Hey everybody, this is Bobby White from Integrated Rhythm. We're here to ask you to please consider donating to the podcast. You can do so by going to patreon.com/integrated rhythm. You can do so by Venmoing @BobbySwungover. And make sure to put a little IR in the note so we make sure it goes to the right people. You can also do so by PayPaling @BobbyWhite3. And once again, putting a little IR in the window there. Doing so will help us keep this podcast going, and we love doing it, and we hope you love it too. If you can't afford to donate at this time because times are rough, we totally understand. We don't want you to put yourselves out. We want you to keep enjoying the podcast for free. However, if you have a little bit of pocket change in your pocket, we would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thanks and have a great day. We here at Integrated Rhythm always ask listeners to support Black businesses, and Kenneth Shipp is a Black business owner. You can hire him for teaching or DJing, and as you can see from this podcast, he definitely knows what he's talking about. You can go to his personal page over at facebook.com/Kenneth Commander Shipp. That's Commander SHIPP, all one word. There you can generally find him geeking out over movies and other nerd projects and events. And make sure to check out the Ujima Blues Foundation, which we've talked about in this episode. You can find them at ujimablues.org. That's UJIMA blues.org. You can also donate to this great cause over at facebook.com/Ujima Blues Foundation.
Yeah, so it was me, Julie Brown, Brianna McIntyre, and Crystal Wilkerson trying to have a conversation on compression. So we're trying to because they had the opportunity to meet Ellis. I have been to Clarksdale. I'm losing count now. Still haven't been able to meet Ellis. I've met a bunch of different folks in and around Mississippi, but I still haven't had the personal opportunity to meet him. Yes, okay, honking out there. And but she wanted to, Julie specifically was like, yeah, I want you to feel what I think he was giving me in compression. And then she brought up different old timers I met in Nashville, and we got right into that track of, it was always that ain't it, baby. That ain't that ain't it, baby. And then we also kind of generally found that they were like much stronger as far as compression compared to everyone else. Like when my students, and again, as long as people can give me a functional amount of compression in close embrace, that's usually what I'm looking for, is that we can always play with the levels of that and like always trying to find that cozy spot between you and other partners. So really what I'm always looking for is like, is there enough here to work and make movements, execute movements well? So obviously any point where that just falls off, then you're going to have to bring that up. But I was always very used to a large amount of compression because specifically Black women I was dancing with the most, very, very intentional. Like if they're going to move forward and move through you, like it's there. Like I never had to worry about it. I was like, where are you? Oh, you're there. Hello. Aha, got it. So yeah, they some of the elders I learned from we're not giving a lot of advice, but I at least had that metric, or at least I had that data point of like, okay, I know what you're giving me. I may not be giving you exactly what you want yet, but okay, I can definitely feel the energy or the amount of compression that you're putting out.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes I know that as a swing dancing scene together that we've kind of been asking this question about like how much is too much, in terms of give and take and connection, I think sometimes. So that contrast, I could totally understand geeking out about that and being like, well, the old timers were like super present, maybe more present than we may allow ourselves to be in this current moment. And so cool.
I've said the other thing that, going back to, we were talking about improvisation earlier, is that they're incredibly comfortable in their voice the entire time, particularly Black women, and especially if they were in the follower role. I never had confusion on what they wanted. Like it was always like, it's like, I'm going to do this thing right now. And I think that can throw a lot of people for a loop if you have particularly leads that are used to a very specific, I'm going to execute a certain amount of energy or a certain amount of movement to create this very specific thing in my head. And it's like, if you dance with these old timers, that's not going to happen. You need to expect that there's going to be that you did this thing, and generally they're probably going to follow the shape or the line or the direction that you sent them in. They're probably not going to just like disconnect hands and go do their own thing. It's like, that's probably not going to happen. It's like, but if you're very forceful about a very specific thing, it's like, you really need to have your listening ears and your connection to be able to pick up, because they're being clear. It's like the information's there if you're paying attention. Like it's not hidden under a rock or anything. It's like the information is there. So it's all on you as that lead to pay attention, and like go into it knowing that this can be a really fun back and forth. It really can. But if your idea is like, I need this rigid very specific thing to happen. This just ain't the place. This just ain't the place for that.
Yeah, and again, this like totally reminds me of the chances I've had to dance with like a Southern California dancer from the original from the swing era. How like the followers were themselves 150%, and they moved the way that they wanted to move. And if you their dancing wasn't developed to do really super fancy compression and stretch and like reacting very quickly to compression and stretch. Like they didn't design their dancing that way. And so you had to like be very clear and simple, and that's what their dancing was about, so that they could like move the way they wanted to and be themselves in that movement, which was a huge wake-up call, because I also wasn't very good. I was a good modern dancer at the time, but a horrible like that kind of dancer. And my brain was like, I need to do something fancy to let them know that I'm a good dancer, which was not what you wanted to do.
Yeah. I guess this might be a good time to talk about one of my class philosophies that's in my bio, and something that people reference quite a bit. But a lot of it comes from this interaction with old timers, and just, when we talk about blues idiom dances, we sometimes, I'll bring the fishtail up again. It can be a move that we execute in the course of a dance, or you could just do that. You could just hold on to your partner for a whole song and just fishtail, and it not be super super complicated. And when I tell students that, they still don't believe me. They just do not believe me, and they're always trying to do an extra thing or try to add it. I'm like, so sometimes, again, where that quote "chill the fuck out" came from, is literally just, you can really have a fun dance doing one move. I promise. I swear. It's like, if you talk to other dancers that have finally gotten to that point too, I got to make that caveat. Dancers that have gotten to that point, because there might be some other folks that are still like, but no, I got to build up. It's like, if that's your thing, cool. But I would also like to advocate this other, I think, critical piece. And it's like, because if you can get this, if you're comfortable in yourself as a dancer, and you can get this piece, the other stuff is gravy. And it's really great gravy. It's a good Southern thick brown gravy, and it's delicious. It's just full of, it's not healthy by any means, but it's delicious. It's just really delicious and thick.
I want gravy.
But this one move and being comfortable there is the biscuits, and it's like, you're not going to just scoop. You could scoop gravy, but that might be a little much. It's like, you still need a base to put it on. And to me, this base is the thing that's going to make you chill and like exude that ephebism, just keep that youthful energy across your dances. Is, can you be chill with these with a single move? Yeah. Something else I'll do when we're doing like compression exercises is, I try to avoid just doing hugs, because posture wise, sometimes hugs is not getting them exactly where they need to be at. But I use that analogy a lot of, when you're hugging someone, do you get in there and you're like, looking at your watch, trying to figure out like, when is this thing gonna be over? It's like, if that's your mindset, and it's like, you're not chill, you're not there yet. Because people can feel it in the body language. It's like you're probably not be pulling away. The compression's like, yeah, you're touching, but you're not really there. So yeah, sometimes it's like, all right, we're gonna put on a song, and don't want you to move. I just want you to be comfortable. Like, hell, you can weight shift. I'm gonna take all these other moves away. It's like, you can weight shift. That's fine. It's like, you can weight shift to the music. It's like, but get comfortable in this spot. And then you'll still see people that want to break. I'm like, get back over here. Get comfortable in that spot. And then the other thing that makes me think of too is, we talk about like the atmosphere helping create that learning environment. So I don't know how many people were there in the juke joints when the time you got to go there. But during the festivals, I mean, it is packed. It's Reds especially is a fire code hazard. Like that is the amount of people that were in there. We were I think it was the first time I was there. I mean, it was packed both times, but I specifically remember, there's that carpet that's there in front of the band and so on and so forth, and it kind of runs all the way back to the drummer and stuff. And
The one near the open circuit board with sparks flying out of it. Yeah.
yes, that carpet.
Yeah.
And I remember, during the festival weekend, all the seats are going to be gone, and it's going to be standing room only anyway. But then if you're trying to make room to dance, like then your options are even smaller. So like we're crammed in basically with the band. I remember being like my butt. I was like, all right, I got to remember where this hi-hat is so that I don't go back into it. So like if you could have looked at us in a picture, you would have thought we were like dancers with the band and just kind of like mixed in to that space because it's the only floor space really left to do anything. And I bring that up because we didn't do anything out in the open, and we weren't even doing closed position stuff. We didn't have it. Like it just was not going to happen. It's like you got to do close embrace. That's it. Like that is the connection. It's like you try to do a spin thing if you want to, but then you're gonna have 5 angry bar patrons at you. Like, what do you like? Read the room, and they'd be right. It's like you did not read the room. So like to give them that context, like sometimes I will also just squeeze. I'll pull chair, like depending on the venue, so I'll pull chairs. I'll squeeze the room down. It's like, all right, y'all all get to work in this corner. Like we got this whole studio. Like I don't care, work in the corner. If anything, that will help you reinforce the fact of they didn't have space to work at. That's what helped create. I mean, obviously, sometimes it's also about wanting to be with the person that you're dancing with. I'm not trying to say that wasn't a factor, but some of it's just literally environment function. It's like you've been in Reds, other juke joints that are along the Mississippi River, like West Helena, Arkansas, a couple others going down, like some of the other ones that are closed. But you see pictures of them, there ain't a lot of room in there. And this is not a knock on Ground Zero, but Ground Zero is like it's a good blues bar, but I would not consider it a like and obviously just the data was created, so it's not as old as some of the other bars. But you just look at the space in it, it's like that. I mean, maybe a Barrel House Club would have been as big as Ground Zero, but a lot of juke joints are closer to Reds. Like it's a single shotgun all the way to the back. Yeah, and you think about a lot of that beer is coming out of, I think, I forget how the fridge is there, but some of them have full refrigeration. It is literally just a person that's got beer in a cooler and serving it at them there. Having a full bar would be rare. And you and the band and whatever dance space, there might be some tables, and that's all you got to work with. And there might be a whole ton of tables, so even your dance space is even less. And just knowing that like that environment can help inform your connection and getting comfortable with it.
Yeah, I remember walking into Reds and thinking size wise that it felt like somebody's garage, right, Bobby? Like,
I mean,
yeah. And
yeah.
when you mention it, it's like there's the intimacy of a juke joint space is spiritually important to it. I guess and I had like in my head I was like, oh yeah, Ground Zero is a juke joint and Reds is a juke joint. But when I look at that old, one of the old pictures from I think it was a Clarksdale, Mississippi joint, where it has like the woman in the riding boots dancing, that incredible picture. But like that to me looks like that's that's an intimate space. Like it's not a big space, you can tell. Man, that makes a lot of sense. And the for pure a lot of times pure Balboa instructors, when they're teaching pure Balboa, will like push everyone into a corner of the room so they can understand what it means that this dance was not a dance that had space. It was a dance that yeah.
There's a dance out of Memphis called strutting, and I see people take off to the races on that all the time, and I'm like, I mean, sure, Memphis blues bars are a little bit bigger, but you're still working between aisles of tables, So there's no way they were doing anything what y'all like. And again, it's another constricting lesson. It's like, all right, go into the corner and work that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Man, I feel like there's so much to explore in the idea of what does the space do to the dance? And that
Yeah.
seems obvious to me now, but like my mind's kind of blown.
Yeah. That's awesome. But I think it's so important when we think about social dancing and these dances that have emerged in places where people are versus dances that have emerged in studios, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we superimpose our thinking about studios or concert halls onto social dances, like some of the fundamental ways of how we think about movement have to shift, right? And so,
Yes. And
uh,
in a lot of ways, like one of the biggest ones I think for the swing dancing world is that mm, I think it took the party out of the dance a little bit. The fact that like so many modern people go and learn their moves in a studio and then they go to a dance that night that the event puts on. How much does that feel like you're going out for a night on the town to a party, which I think is what it originally was like a lot of the spirit of these dancers.
yeah, Bobby, one of my favorite things in exploring Balboa, especially in this last year, is hearing you say that and say, like, imagine you're going to a party, like the type of
Oh
energy
yeah.
that you bring. Yeah, you've been saying that in your teaching and things, and I found it really inspiring. Because I know what I'm like when when I'm about to like cut up when I'm at a like, so I'm like, you don't know what's about to happen. Like it's,
Right?
so there's a very different energy as compared to when I'm like, okay, now I'm going to do Charleston. It's like,
Right. And,
Oh,
and at a
gotcha.
party, everyone feels comfortable just making shit up.
yeah,
Everyone feels comfortable just doing what feels good at a party. And so few people, especially like in the average intermediate Balboa dancer, especially maybe like 5 to 10 years ago, if they went to a dance, they would not feel comfortable just making shit up, I think.
right. I agree. I agree with that.
Like,
And so
and I guess it makes me wonder, like, how do you get people comfortable? Like, and again, that's obviously what a thought process I've always been having, but that's one that I definitely, I don't have answers for it yet. Uh, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But like, because if you think about, yes, we know there were Lindy Hoppers that were having an opportunity to practice outside of the Savoy in different spaces. So like, they were like, I'm going to make sure that my stuff looks tight. But we also got to know, like, okay, but every single move and thing that we didn't just come out of that pressure cooker or those people working together. It's like there had to be other folks that were kind of going for used to the transmission of moves idea again. It's like we know it's like they weren't probably doing it, or maybe they did it in their living rooms and stuff before they went out to the dance. I think about let's use the Soul Train example again. Is that Soul Train coming out on a Saturday morning? You had better learn and know the move that whatever that new one that someone brought out that morning, so that you could do it Saturday night when you're with your friends at whatever like disco, whatever club you're going to be at, that you're going to be able to pull it off there as well. So like I guess that's my like, how do I get them to have fun doing that in their house so they can come out to the thing on Saturday night or Friday night and be like, yeah, I've been working on this thing. Or again, to your point of like just playing in the moment of like, how do you get them comfortable even just at the social dance of like, yes, I have my framework for how this works. Now can I actually have, instead of just trying to execute the same thing over and over again, which can still be like making variations on it, but how do I get comfortable just playing in this space?
yeah, yeah.
I feel in some ways, I mean, in the classes where Chisomo's heard me talk about that, a lot of times we'll start off by playing like a funk song. Like I'll usually start off with like
Mm.
Otis Redding, Down in the Valley, and get people just moving around to that and remind like, so just imagine you're in a club and the only thing you're expected to do is step and step is it's just basically do this. And then you'll get bored with that in 10 seconds and start doing other things while you're moving in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, we've tried to just like set up that example in the beginning of the class and kind of remind people that the social dance is a party, and that the way that they're working on their dancing, can be that way. And again, like it's not a perfect answer to the question. It's maybe only one answer out of the many different directions that people will have to come to. And something I think I would love to see more in the scene, both the Balboa and Lindy Hop scene. I don't know how much it's in the blues scene. Is healthy jam circles where you have people being comfortable sharing their dancing and showing off their dancing in front of friends and strangers, as part of the like community sharing process, as part of like their night at the party.
Yeah, I feel like one. I wish blues did some more jam circles, because I think that would help with some. Um, it's like I feel like we've gotten past a yeah, we've moved past some toxic competition things that are going on. So very excited about that. But then I think it's swung so far the other way of like, now we don't want to compete, or like so much so that like now throwing out some badass moves. Or me and Julie were even just talking about, we don't like, when people are solo dancing, like, where are the power moves? Because as a break dancer, like, I love my top rock, I love my transition moves, but you're building all that to get to your bag of tricks, things you like, your power moves, like. And we were even lamenting that it's started to swing so far the other way, to like, it feels like the solo dancers weren't even bringing out like, and this is the thing I've been working on, and it fits in right here, and it's like, even that's missing, we're like, sorry, to get back to your, oh goodness, I lost. So could you say your last part one more time? Sorry, it just,
the jam circles.
yes, jam circles. Okay. So yeah, I would love to see blues get back to that a little bit more, because I feel like we've gotten away from it. And but I do feel like we've gotten very comfortable, and I guess to go back to the solo dancing, and going back to like that communal feel, we have gotten a lot more comfortable jamming in front of the band, which is something that just like, as a live music lover, as I know we all are, but it's particularly just in bars, is like, if I didn't have a partner there, I'm probably going to hang out. Usually the bassist, me and the bassist, a lot of Nashville bassists, we're tight. So we just be in that corner together, hanging out, joke, laughing, and I might be dancing, doing my own thing, and just be very comfortable in that space, and not needing to, like, maybe I'll relate to the person that's next to me, but I'm good just kind of jamming in that spot. And I've seen a lot more, sometimes toward the end of dances, but I've seen a lot more where people are comfortable the entire night, of like, I'm not hanging on the sides or the tables or in the back of the room. I'm gonna hang out here in front of the band until someone's ready to, like, maybe do a partner, or I might even tell them, nah, I'm good. I'm good right now. I'm gonna stay here. And then what I see happening there in between the people is sometimes someone, hey, you see this thing I just did? It's like, oh, I saw that thing you just did. I got something for you though. And then that playing back and forth starts happening there. But I would also, I guess, a caveat I'd have to add is like, I tend to see people that are there that are already gotten comfortable with solo dancing. So that's going to be another, thing of like, not just getting them comfortable partner dancing, but can we get you comfortable in your own skin to also be up there and know that like, you're not getting judged up there. Like, it's like 10 to 20 people deep having fun up there. So you're good. No one's like, ignore everyone else. Look at that one person.
Yeah, being comfortable solo dancing has been a long journey for me, and I wonder how much of that is my personality, how much of that is growing up in white waspy Southern culture, where I just didn't experience dancing by myself and with people around, until I turned 18 and started doing swing dancing. And even that, like, sometimes I feel really confident with it, and then other times I'll just like be sitting there and I'll have my hands in my pockets and I'm like, I have no desire to get out there and feel like I'm judged. And I'm like, I've been a professional dancer for how long? Like, why do I just not give a fuck and just go out there? And it's a long journey for me.
I think that I love your honesty with that, because I think that there are a lot of people in that place. And I know I've shared this with Bobby that there are some arenas in which I feel really comfortable dancing on my own, and those are usually in like informal spaces, like maybe to more popular music, because I can do whatever I want. But then like in the swing dance space, I might be like, oh no, I'm gonna get these moves wrong.
That breaks my heart. Oh, that breaks my heart. It shouldn't be that way, right?
Right.
Right.
It shouldn't be that way, but I bet there's so many people who probably feel that way. And there are lots of people who may not even, like, the thing that we've kind of said but not said is it might be people where the barrier to entering these dances is so high because it means dancing. And they might not think that they can, but I really do. And listening to you, Kenneth, and in this discussion, I'm like, dancing is for everybody, and I really value instructors such as yourselves that will take how people move on their own and say, okay, let's build from this, because it really is for everybody.